Chairperson, respected Professor Ahmed, respected resource persons on the dais, respected my esteemed colleagues of this college, respected guests, and my dear students. Before I say anything on this topic, first of all, I'd like to thank Balurghat College for having invited me. I'd like to thank the Department of English for giving me such an opportunity to be here among you. And I feel privileged, I feel honored. The chairperson has told me to speak on this area. Before I speak anything on specific area, let me make a point very clear. My topic is not on a specific book or a specific literature. It would be a kind of overall broad presentation of this area, simply because my address would be more to students than to the resource persons. I'm sorry that I may not cater to the needs of your scholastic thoughts, because I feel whenever I go to seminars, whenever we talk from this side, the things that we talk, they go over the heads of the students and they do not come to the rescue of the students. Before I want to talk on this topic of a particular theory of marginalization, I'd like to share a view that I have felt. I feel that whenever there is a case of inequality in society or anywhere, in terms of power relationships, in terms of gender relationships, whenever there is a case of inequality, there is possibly a theory and there is a protest against it. There is a sense of resistance against it. And if you go through the major theories, you will find that this is there. For example, if you go through the theory of Bakhtin's carnivalist, there Bakhtin talks about breaking up the hierarchies. If you go through Derrida's sense of decentering, he also talks about breaking the so-called specific centers of a text. If you go through Derrida's attack against logocentrism, there also he talks about breaking up this center of this Western culture which promotes the sense of logocentrism. If you go through postmodern narratives and literatures, you will find there is an attack on the grand narratives. And there is also an attack on the stability of meaning promoted by modern literature and traditional literature. If you go through the post-colonial literatures in general and post-colonial theories in general, there also you will find an attack on the colonial masters and their strategies. And when you go through cultural studies, you will find that there is an attack on elite culture, and cultural studies tries to break this so-called hierarchy between the elite culture, high culture, and so-called popular culture. And now may I begin with this so-called trajectory of marginalization. I'd like to subscribe to what the chairperson has said, or our respected Professor Ahmed has said. Marginalization is nothing new, and it is embedded since the origin of human civilization. It was very much there throughout the globe, and when we think of a country like ours, it is very much there, because ours is a country of linguistic plurality, cultural plurality, and religious plurality. And marginalization in our country before the colonial phase was conspicuous in terms of caste prejudice, racial prejudice, and even religious prejudice. The next point that I would like to make is that whenever there is this kind of prejudices, there may not be a kind of evolution of marginal literature unless those literatures try to address these problems of deprivations, the problems of marginalizations, and therefore marginal literatures in India in general has been a literature of dissent and resent. It is essentially a literature of protest. It is essentially a literature of protest against the so-called powerful hegemonic groups. Now I try to make out the basic difference between what kind of marginalization was there before the colonial phase, during the colonial phase, and now after the colonial phase. In the post-colonial era, the dimension of marginalization has become very complex. But before the post-colonial era, that is in the colonial phase, this was sharply defined in terms of our clash between the foreign group, a powerful group that was the British, and the natives. It was a one-to-one reaction, as it were, and it was sharply defined in colonial India. But the moment we come to post-coloniality, it has assumed a very complex form, and it has given birth to several ramifications and manifestations in terms of class prejudices, in terms of racial prejudices, in terms of prejudices related to power hegemony. Now, when we come to this literature of post-coloniality, we find that who were the subalterns or the marginal before this post-colonial phase, they have turned to be the powerful group in the post-colonial phase. What I'm trying to suggest is that during the colonial phase, the natives were treated as subalterns. After the colonial phase, the subalterns, so-called subalterns, the hitherto subalterns, they have created their own subalterns. They have created their own subalterns. Thus, if the natives were the marginal during the colonial phase, the same natives created their own subalterns by consigning the relatively powerless group to a somewhat marginal status, and thus relegating them to what we call the status of the other. We may be tempted to say, therefore, that in this post-colonial era, we have been perpetuating and continuing the same kind of strategies which were there in the colonial phase. And what else? Two more features that I have tried to detect and recognize in the post-colonial phase in India: the status of the marginals. In the post-colonial phase in our country, unlike in America, marginality is also defined or is also recognized in terms of appropriation of power. Appropriation of power, that means the marginal who are treated as marginal today, they try to become powerful as their masters, and they try to appropriate the same kind of power. Since I'm basically a man of American literature, let me draw the distinction. In American literature, when we talk about this kind of marginalization, today in America possibly there is no marginal as such, because the distinction between marginal and mainstream has become very blurred in America today. And let me conclude by saying that along with so many theories, along with so many feminist theories, post-colonial theories, theories related to queer identity, theories related to racial identities, theories related to cultural identities, what is marginal today may become the mainstream tomorrow, and vice versa. Thank you so much.